Jay Duplass plays Steve, Molly's husband in FX is Dying for Sex. And Jay, Steve's an interesting character. What were your initial thoughts when reading the script? And then what made you say, sure, let's do it? Because this was an offer, correct?
Yes. My initial thoughts reading the script were, boy, this is a big swing. Uh, we are trying to tell maximum dramatic story with maximum hard comedy. I was, you know, daunted and excited by it. It's exactly the kind of um, creative endeavor that I want to be a part of. But when you get down to it, it is scary. I play basically a villain in it on some level. Steve is like a soft villain. I, you know, there was a little bit of excitement about playing like kind of like a soft boy who's like basically the villain. But also like, you always have that knee-jerk reaction of like, I don't want to be the bad guy, I want to be the good guy, because he's not a big brash villain. It has to be realistic, and ultimately, it became super clear, like, yeah, we gotta understand Steve, and there were some super cool things about him. The fact that he was really good at, getting Molly into remission and, you know, helping her get out of cancer the first time. So super complex, but you know, working with Michelle Williams, never gonna say no. Jenny Slate's an old friend of mine. I'm buds with Rob. He's so amazing. I was so excited to see him in that role. Like I could just imagine him so deeply settled into it. So yeah, and just like the idea that they brought in, one of our greatest living actors, Michelle Williams, one of the greatest, dramatic actors of our time. And, Robin and Jenny are like hard comedians. You know what I mean? They go hard in the paint. But I don't know. The whole thing was just like a wild package, and I was just excited to take a swing at it.
And Michelle's funny. I mean, what was it like working with her and having that partnership? And Steve, I mean, he's maybe a villain, but he's not like someone you hate. Like there are
No.
likable things about him. He's someone you
Yeah.
like that.
And I think that was the challenge too, is to not make him arch, to make him a guy who's really doing his best, and he's actually good at a lot of this stuff, but he's not good at the one important thing, which is like helping Molly enjoy her life for however long she's got. Um, Working with Michelle was incredible. I mean, she cracked me up a ton in it, and I wasn't expecting that. I haven't seen her do much comedy, but she's just such an incredible actor and so inhabited the role. And I could even just, there were a few times where I was in the room with her and she'd give me a look because I'm her nemesis basically at that moment that would crack me up on the inside. And I would have to just hold it in, until the take was over. But yeah, she did such a, I mean, she cracked me up through watching the whole thing, even though it was devastating at the same time.
What are your thoughts on the relationship between Molly and Steve? Because he is a caretaker, and he, as you said, he is good at it, but like she sort of feels smothered, and maybe he just does not understand what she actually wants at all.
I think that's a pretty good sum up of what's going on with them. I think I think it's a really interesting take on a romantic relationship and a bad boyfriend, because on paper the dude's doing a really good things, and he's very sensitive, or at least he's trying to be, but ultimately, you know, I think one of the very specific things it's tackling is like, the your classic straight white American male still wants to be a superhero, still wants to win the day, even if it is getting his wife out of cancer or extending her life a little bit longer, even if it tortures her in some way. He's still fixated on what he wants out of this and feeling good about himself. So I thought that was a super interesting take, and I don't know, it was very easy for me to just like believe in his aim, is like he felt very strongly that he could take care of her the best. It's just not exactly what she wanted at the time. So I just went full boat into that direction and allowed myself to be emotional and care for her and let the audience know that he did love her.
But the sex is gone. I mean, he doesn't
Yeah.
have that lustful feeling anymore. I mean, is that part of like that stage of marriage, or do you think he feels like he's gonna hurt her, or the trauma?
The trauma. Yeah, the trauma. I think the trauma is real, but I think it's all mixed in. They've been together for a very long time. Clearly, you realize through the backstory that, they don't have the best marriage, and it's not just the cancer piece, it's their their power balance is off. She hasn't really been able to express herself. She's kind of in a supporting role for his career. So, I think it's more than the trauma. I think it's more than the cancer. I think it's partially, just the challenge of being married, of being together for a long time and keeping your sex life alive and keeping yourself alive, and of course, like the age old thing, which is like, if people evolve and change the way that they really need to and naturally do, does that necessarily mean that they should still be married?
I mean, your most dramatic scene is so like hilarious and awkward and painful. I mean, he cries when she's performing a sexual act.
Yeah.
What's it like filming a scene like that? Well, I'm assuming there's like chaos around you. You're just like looking at people and you have to be this.
Truly, it's the most nervous I've ever been to shoot any scene in my life, for sure. Is we are on our way up to having sex. We're building up to having sex. I'm revealing quite a bit of dad bod, like when Liz and Kim were like, "Are you comfortable showing lots of your intimate parts of your body?" And I was like, "I am. I don't know if it's gonna be what you want." So there's nerves with that. It was very early. It was maybe my second or third day filming with Michelle. Um, but we worked our way through it, and yeah, and having like my biggest emotional breakdown in the middle of it, and I mean, all I can say is Michelle Williams. I was able to just kind of like lock and load into her eyes, and the weirdest part is the reset. You're building up sexually, and then you collapse into tears and into her arms and into a meltdown, basically. And then we'd go reset, and you'd have to just like erase all that and then do the whole thing again. So that's one definitely easily one of my biggest acting challenges I've ever been up against.
How much time do you get between that? Like if you have to do the whole thing over?
We did it over many, many times, and there were several times where I was like, "Hey guys, I need 30 more seconds." And a lot of times for those 30 more seconds, Michelle kind of held me like a baby and reset me, and that did it. Yeah, it was pretty great.
Assuming this is like also where intimacy coordinators step in. Were they just all over the set? Was there one main one? Because this whole show was, I mean, this was timid compared to other things that are happening on this show.
Yeah, we had one main intimacy coordinator. Her name is eluding me right now, and I regret that. Hopefully, we can include her in this. She was incredible, and just exactly what you want it to be. Very communicative, but not stepping on things, and not that, no pun intended, stepping on things, but really like there to help facilitate, but letting us find it as well, because this is a really complicated scene to pull off, and it never unfolds the way that it's exactly written uh on the day, because you really got to find it in the specificity of the actors that are there and what our relationship was building up to be. So she was incredible. We had awesome support, and honestly, just like Liz and Kim were just amazing. They were just two moms on set the whole time, just kind of taking care of everybody. And I say it a lot, but I really do believe it. It's like, show running is a huge undertaking. I think it's the toughest job in our industry. And I think even tougher than it looks on paper because the great ones, they do a lot of mothering and fathering and parenting of everybody in the show. And, when you're doing stuff that's this sensitive, this emotionally sensitive, this naked, you know, literally and metaphorically, you really need somebody that's very loving and that is there for you. And they were there for us the whole time. And that's a difference between, something that could have fallen flat and, and something that just soars in all the right ways. I'm getting a note from Emma, our publicist, that Claire Warden was the intimacy coordinator. Claire, thank you, and sorry I forgot your name.
It's so funny, but it's also, I mean, you're gonna cry and laugh.
You're
And
gonna
I
cry
feel
and
like
laugh.
through your kind of like the projects in your history, I feel like that's something that you're attracted to as an actor. Would that be
Yes,
correct?
yeah, crying and laughing was definitely the whole tone of Transparent, which was my first big acting job. And honestly, this show, I've done so many great things. I've had a really lucky career where I came to acting late and I've been able to only do wonderful things mostly. But this project had a little bit of that feeling of Transparent. When we were making Transparent at the time, we were like, whoa. Not that we felt it. The world was telling us you are moving and changing culture in a positive direction. Um, I felt that on this show. Like we're kind of like uncovering stuff that is buried and needs to come out into the light. And it was cool to do it in the world of laughing and crying.
And it was interesting to watch his sort of reaction to what Molly wanted, which was more sexual adventure while staying on his insurance. Uh,
Yes.
so that was one of my favorite parts. Is like, can I'm still on your insurance, right? So
Yeah.
what did you think about his reaction? He didn't like freak out. I mean, he freaked out, but he wasn't like super angry.
No, I loved it. I mean that's the testament to their writing and how complicated they write these characters, because to me that is the key thing that tells me that Steve really does love Molly. He's like he's not going to abandon her. I mean, she needs to leave him on the side of the road, but if she needs a credit card to run out in these last several months, he's going to let her do it. I think it's the sweetest thing in the world. I think it's a very subtle version of, I think, what is maybe my favorite moment in the whole movie, when Rob's character learns that, she has cancer and she says, you probably want to go now. And he's like, no, I just want you to keep kicking me in the dick. It's, it might be the most romantic line I've ever heard or seen in a TV show or a movie. And, Steve letting her just like run his credit card into the ground is also incredibly romantic to me in a completely different way.
What it was your favorite scene for you to shoot?
The final scene with her in the bed. There was a world where we maybe weren't going to do that. They weren't going to bring Steve in. And I said, hey, just bring me in and let us wing it, basically. They had something sketched up. I don't know how much we used or we didn't use, but, you know, it was one of those moments, and it was shot very towards the end of the show where we had all gone through a bunch of stuff together. And it was just such a great thing to be able to do, to just walk in that room with Michelle, to see her in the state that she was in, to kind of just have like a last little moment with her. It felt beautiful and bittersweet, and it felt like we were free to just kind of do whatever we needed to do in that moment. And I don't remember how much of the script we used or how much we improvised, but it definitely felt like art imitating life in some way.
Have you felt or heard the impact of what this show means to people who have lost someone or are going through this situation? What do you think sort of the impact or the legacy of this show is?
It means a lot to people to see their experience, be represented in a way that feels true to them. It also means a lot to people. I've just heard a lot from people who are like, I was so scared of, whatever. My mom's had bouts with cancer on and off, and I'm so scared of like the end of this and where this is all going, and that the movie kind of gave them a little bit of hope, that it doesn't have to be a nightmare and that it's all part of the process, you know. My wife is a hospital social worker, and she's done a lot of hospice work, so I'm not like a stranger to what this world is, but what, you know, and what I do know about the world that she works and lives in is a beautiful world, and it's all the bullshit gets stripped away and people really get to be themselves and express themselves in ways that, you know, are not commonplace in our post, you know, pre-apocalyptic capitalistic nightmare that we're living in, you know. So there's real comfort there, and I think the show really showed it to people in a way that, I don't know, feels like a real positive message.
And hopefully there's some Emmy recognition that comes along the way for the series. You know, you're being submitted for movie limited supporting actor, and one of the people that is also being submitted in that category is Mark Duplass for Good American Family.
Yes.
Uh, do you even like him? Like, what's going on with, like, is this a rivalry now? Is this a death match?
I mean, that's so interesting. Yeah, I like that guy. Uh, you know what's wild about it? Um, I had we both definitely have had this moment where we're like, this is freaking surreal that we're both, you know, in Emmy consideration for the same you know, same category. What the weirdest thing about it to me is when I see myself acting in stuff that is in a movie theater or on TV, it's just imposter syndrome. I'm like, look at all these awesome actors, and then what the hell am I doing? Who let me walk into this room and be on camera? You know what I mean? And I think my brother's a great actor. Obviously, I've cast him in tons of stuff that I make, but I also have that with Mark. You know, I don't have the part of like, who let this guy be on set, but I have that moment where I'm like, what's my brother doing in this crazy, in the case of his show, in this crazy show, playing this very disturbed person, you know? And so it was kind of fun to have that like twin moment of like um imposter syndrome for both of us. So I don't know if I'm doing a lot for like our Emmy campaign by saying that like we're not real actors, but that's kind of what it felt like on both cases.
What was that like growing up together? Did you like, was this always the goal? When did the two of you both decide we're both going to pursue this as a career?
We grew up in New Orleans and we were musicians growing up because the only sort of, you know, I guess like shining star representation of a successful artist was basically like a 55-year-old black rhythm and blues musician from New Orleans, you know, and we tried to be that and we failed dramatically. But when I got to Austin for college in 1991, Richard Linklater and Robert Rodriguez were making movies DIY there. And that's when we always loved movies. We just never thought that we would have the birthright to make them. You know, we were like, well, we're not a Coppola kid, so it's not going to happen. They were so expensive and whatnot. But then when the digital revolution came, and honestly, it happened when we got our first feature film, The Puffy Chair, into Sundance. Mark had just finished a European tour with a band that he was in. It brought him to his knees, and we got our movie in Sundance, and we were just like, okay, one unreliable entertainment career at a time, and it's movies now.
And finally, what's next? Where are we going to see you?
Well, I'm in Dublin right now filming a movie with Jessica Chastain, based on the book Incidents Around the House. And it's a Blumhouse atomic monster horror film. Very, very different from Dying for Sex. But so I'm running around screaming and yelling with like a chicken with its head cut off right now. So that's my next acting project, and I've gotten back to writing and directing for the first time in 14 years, and I have a movie called The Baltimoreans that premiered at South by Southwest this year and won the Audience Award. So we're gonna have a theatrical release this fall with Sapin Films and IFC, and I'm super, super excited about it. I love movies more than anything in the world. So